Hey everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia back with another episode of the Jungle Roar podcast powered by the great folks at Prize Picks and CLNS Media. We are live this morning, the day after Minicamp finished up for the 2026 Cincinnati Bengals. This was supposed to be the last day of Minicamp, but Zac Taylor cut the Minicamp short, not by one, but actually by two practice days, giving the players the day off and summer off, setting them loose on Wednesday after a few team meetings in the morning. The Bengals are now officially in their summer break portion of the schedule. Here to talk about all of it, and Mean Joe Burrow is the one and only Richard Skinner. We know and love him as Skinny on Local 12 and local12.com. Skinny, it's like the last day of school, that last day of mandatory minicamp. Turns out that Zac Taylor thought that the Bengals got a lot done over the three phases of OTAs and the minicamp that really was held on Tuesday, and especially in phase number two, and decided, well, with all the work we've gotten done, there's no reason to keep the Bengals around any longer. Set them loose, get them fresh and ready for the last week in July.
Yeah, and I know I'm sure there's a segment of the fan base that's wringing their hands at this. Like you skipped out on 2 days. You could have done. They weren't doing much anyway. There weren't a lot of competitive reps. A lot of this is install work and a handful of competitive reps. He felt like they got all the install work that they needed done. He mentioned that they used more of phase two than they've usually used in the past, and so you do your players a solid. I mean, I think this is also an homage to the fact that once they got to the OTA phase of the offseason program that they had full attendance, that guys came to work, guys worked hard, guys worked smart, and I think as a good head coach, I think that's kind of a little pat on the back to say, yeah, you guys put in a lot of good work, and we'll give you an extra day, a head start on this. They did have a walkthrough yesterday, so they did take advantage of at least one more walkthrough session, but they didn't have a practice open to the media or a regular practice session. So I know, like I said, I know there's a segment of the fan base that's wringing their hands, but I think in this case, if he felt like they got all the work done that they needed to get done, and the players worked hard, and they were all there, all those things, I think it's the right thing for him to do.
I also think that certainly Zac Taylor made note of what exactly was done. And I think he feels, and I asked Zac Taylor this, where they are in a good place compared to last year.
Yeah.
I also asked Zac Taylor about the focus and the attention to detail that he's seen from a lot of the veteran players this year and how that's been passed on to the younger players in this offseason. That's different than all of the drama. That's the word I used with Zac Taylor on Wednesday, is that there wasn't the drama of the Trey Hendrickson. There wasn't the drama of Shamar Stewart, the first round pick, who by this time last year was nowhere to be seen and had not signed his first round contract. The fact that there was no drama and it was just business, strictly business, I think is what Zac Taylor appreciated the most about this offseason to this point.
And you could have had some, right? I mean, DJ Turner's up for extension. Dax Hill's up for extension. And Dax got held out. Might have even held himself out because he got a slight injury. Zac didn't report any major injuries yesterday when he was asked about them, so they got through the OTAs unscathed. And a lot of teams didn't. I mean, I think the Giants lost 3 guys for the season during some of these OTA stuff, and some other teams lost some guys, but the Bengals didn't. Chase Brown could have easily, stood on the sideline in a bucket hat, and I think to your point, I think that's also a little tip of the cap of, hey, I know some of you guys are they have to be there for mandatory, or they get fined. Doesn't mean they have to participate. Doesn't mean they have to like it. But that didn't occur this time around. These guys all came to get work in. I mean, I talking to DJ Turner last week. I think Paul Dehner Jr. and I were talking to him for a little bit, and before some other folks came along, and he asked DJ about, you don't have to be here while you're here. He said, I knew once this phase started, this is when I was going to show up because this is when we can get some competitive work done. And so I think that's, again, another reason to say, okay, guys, I really appreciate everybody doing their business, getting their business done, doing it the right way. I think he even said, an extra day or two was a point of diminishing returns almost. So, why tempt fate when you feel like you've got everything in and suddenly on a freak play on the next to last rep of a Thursday OTA when somebody's got their foot out the door and they get hurt? Why risk it?
Joe Burrow made mention of that, and that is what we're going to spend most of this podcast talking about, Skinny, of course, is the comments of Joe Burrow before he went out the door, along with the rest of the team on Wednesday afternoon. And, I know Dan Horde made mention of this and made reference to it, and I thought it was an excellent point, as always, by Dan, regular contributor to this podcast, by the way. And Horde said that, I've seen you, Joe, out working very often an hour or so after training camp practice. A lot was made of the fact that he spent an hour after Tuesday's practice. Well, that is something that Joe Burrow has been doing not once, not twice, but many, many times during the course of the offseason workouts to get as much work as he possibly can. And Burrow talked about, Skinny, that is a chance for him to work on him, not as part of the team, but to work on things that he feels individually he can work on in terms of the passing technique, in terms of the timing with Jamar and T, who also, I believe, took part in that after practice session. And it just, to me, shows the new level of focus for Joe Burrow this offseason. I noticed Joe Burrow, two things. He's relaxed and confident, and he's focused.
Yeah, and talking about that stuff that he did after practice, he did that on Wednesday as well after the walkthrough, because we were supposed to talk to him early. It got pushed back. We were supposed to talk to him on Tuesday. It got eliminated and got pushed to Wednesday, but then Wednesday's got pushed back a little bit. And I'm guessing even on Tuesday, Joe got inkling, even though Zac Taylor said he didn't tell the team as a whole until Wednesday that they were going to do away with that day's practice and not have a Thursday practice, but he even said some of it got out. I'm guessing Joe caught wind of that and realized, I need to get a little bit more work in because I'm not going to get work in on Wednesday. I'm not going to get work in on Thursday. And even in those sessions where he's just working by himself, he even said, he goes, I'm not really working on routes. I'm just working on just throwing the ball to spots or throwing the ball, experimenting with different deep balls. Some guys throw a deep ball. If you remember Jeff Blake, the former Bengals quarterback, threw a deep ball with a huge top on it. I mean, he threw that thing like a balloon way up in the air, and then it just kind of literally fell out of the sky like a bomb. Some guys throw the deep ball on a line. I mean, we've seen Aaron Rodgers zip a 60-yard pass on a rope. And so I think some of that's just experimentation to see how it feels. Am I more consistent hitting the spot there? Can I do if I throw the corner route, can I drop it in there? And I think good for him. And I do think it shows that he is laser focused. I mean, he got ramped up as that press conference went along yesterday to the point to his conversation about being mean and what mean leadership means. But you can feel the sense of urgency that he feels. Like he even said, the front office did all it could do this offseason. We've got all the pieces in place. I feel like this team, like I felt about the 2019 LSU team, and I think when you and sense of urgency is an easy thing to say. Like Dan Pitcher even said yesterday, when we were talking to him for a little bit out in the hall, he said, I come in this building every day with a sense of urgency, but he even says it's more of a re-energized feeling. Like the front office did do everything that you could do to make this roster better. You are going into this with the same offensive line intact for a rare time in the Joe Burrow era. His weapons are paid and happy and healthy. The running back is on the cusp of maybe being the single season yardage record holder in Bengals history from a yard from scrimmage. I think he's going to do it this year, Chase Brown. And so I think when you feel all those pieces, you don't want to let a day go by, an hour go by. You want to do all the things you can to possibly be ready for the season. And I think that's where Joe Burrow's at right now. And I think any of the national media that have done this whole, he's going to want out of here, it sure doesn't sound like a guy who wants out of here, does he?
No, you know what it sounds like, Skinny? He wants to win now. He is ready to win a Super Bowl now. And the one thing and I keep coming back to this, Skinny, the voices in that locker room are much different this time around. And talk is cheap. I get all of that. They still have to get it done once the season starts on September 13th against Tampa Bay. I understand all of that. Talk is cheap. But when you have veterans, and Burrow made reference to this on Wednesday, when you have guys who are veterans who are hungry and you bring those guys in, it brings the level of intensity and expectation up another notch. And obviously we're talking about Dexter Lawrence, who, by the way, Joe Burrow says he's been kicking it with a little bit in the offseason, hanging out with. Go ahead.
Seems like an odd couple relationship. The other
A
part
little
too,
bit.
he didn't mention them by name, but he also said we've got guys that have been there and done that. And it's not just individually, because Dexter Lawrence has done some great things, obviously individually, all Pro honors, Pro Bowl honors, all those things. But
Sure.
the Giants haven't been very good. But a couple of guys have been there, done that. Boy, Maffei's got a Super Bowl ring. Brian Cook's got a Super Bowl ring, and those two guys, I think add to that as well. And so I think that's the other part to it is you've got guys that know what it feels like to be in a championship locker room, that have been in a champion, been part of championship teams, been part of the process of being on a championship team. And you hear that word a lot from coaches and players of embracing the process, because that's what this is. It's not just looking at the games, it's the process of your preparation during the week to get into a game. It's your process of being a pro in the locker room. And you've got some guys that have been there, done that. And then some guys who've done some good individual things. Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen. I think that speaks volumes.
So Jonathan Allen and Dexter Lawrence, the thing that they have, both of them, attitude and hunger. Neither one of them have a Super Bowl ring.
That's right.
And that's who Joe Burrow was mentioning yesterday. Yep. Knowing that these guys not only have the individual resume, they have the hunger. And when you combine those two qualities and put them in the locker room, that I think is already talented now, given how the Bengals have restructured the roster, I don't see how going into the season, Skinny, going into training camp in late July and August, how it could be set up any better. I really don't.
I agree. And I think that goes back to him also restructuring the contract. Like, the front office did right by rebuilding the defense and adding the pieces that you thought they had to add, and they went and did it and went above and beyond with trading for a Dexter Lawrence. And so at that point, Joe even mentioned yesterday, hopefully this gives us a little more, salary cap room. And he said, I'll be willing to do this again. And
Right.
We've seen that with Patrick Mahomes. It's been done multiple times with Patrick Mahomes, because Patrick Mahomes realizes that they're going to use that salary cap savings to improve the roster to help him. And again, this is not a loss for the players either. Like I said, you're getting a pretty good piece of change up front that you can play with too, and invest and do with what you want. So it is a win-win, but it doesn't mean he had to do it. I think he realized for the betterment of this team, he did it. And listen, if they had not done anything this offseason, maybe he says, to hell with it, I'm not going to do that. If you guys aren't going to take the money and spend it wisely and spend it and do things to improve it, why should I? But they did, and I think that's where he sees, hey, they did. I'll do them a solid on top of it.
I'm going to read the quote. Kelsey Conway asked the question of Joe Burrow yesterday about the restructure. It opened up some cap space, which is good for us. I have been open about how I am willing to do whatever they need me to do so they can operate freely, and to your point, Skinny, and will continue doing that as needed. It's always been open and honest, Burrow said of his relationship with Katie Blackburn in the front office. We got a great line of communication, and I think we are in a great spot. We filled just about every hole that we've had. Operationally, we are improving. That means on the field, I assume. We are bringing in the right kind of people. I think for the most part, getting to know the rookies, how they fit into our culture, what we are trying to do here. We had a great offseason. Boy, in a nutshell, Skinny, when I hear that, that is a far cry from the tenor, I think, of what we were hearing or not hearing in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, we psychoanalyzed that one press conference to death, but I mean, there was a tenor in that press conference of, oh gosh, is this guy checking out already? And I think to the point of the whole being re-energized, as Dan Pitcher said, I think that's even a Joe Burrow looks and goes, all right, man, we got everything we need now. This is exciting, as opposed to, man, if I score 42 points, we're going to give up 45 and lose. Oh boy, this is no fun for me. And it's not. I mean, it's just not. I think you want to have the chance to win, and I think he clearly feels that they have a great chance to win. I don't think he would go. Listen, I had some friends joke that he goes, does anybody realize how great that 2019 LSU team was? They're not going to do what that LSU. I said, no, of course they're not going to do what that LSU team did. It's the NFL, but his correlation of having the same feeling about that roster going into the year to win a national championship, which they did, and the feeling he has about this roster going into the year with the chance to go win a Super Bowl.
The focus, if you recall that 2018 LSU team, which he was a part of, that kind of set the foundation for 2019. Now, obviously, the 2025 Bengals didn't set a foundation for anything really, record-wise, going 7-6-11. But the off season, I think, has
Yes.
set the foundation for what the Bengals could achieve. I like what I'm hearing from Joe Burrow. Again, talk is cheap. They have to go out and do it. But I do think the Bengals are in the right frame of mind going into the off season. You have this up on Local 12 and local12.com, Skinny. Mean Joe Burrow. Obviously, a tip of the cap to Mean Joe Green of the great Steel Curtain Steelers of the 1970s, that dynasty. Can Joe Burrow, being mean, come off the right way in that locker room?
So I asked Dan Pitcher that. I think you just came out in the hallway right after I asked the question.
I did. Always late to the party, Skinny. You know me.
No, I was late to the party. I knew he was coming down to talk to a handful of us, and I just didn't know when. So I was trying to transcribe my Joe Burrow stuff, and all of a sudden I look out the window, and there's Dan talking to a couple people. So I even phrased with Dan, if this has been asked, I'm sorry. It had not been asked. I said, Joe described his leadership style as trying to be more mean. I said, have you noticed that? Is it something noticeable? And he kind of smiled. And he gave, I think, a really good answer to it, because when you hear mean, you think, gosh, what a blank hole this guy must be. He said, I'm going to use the word blunt. And I think you can lead like that. Even Joe said, he goes, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable doing this or not. We'll see going forward. We'll see if I continue to do it. But I think that he's going into his 7th year. From an individual standpoint, he's arguably one of the 3 to 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's earned that mantra, right? He's earned that to consider himself one of the best in the NFL. He holds himself to a high standard. I think we all know that part of it. And I think this is literally going, it's time for me to hold everybody else to that same standard. And if it means I have to occasionally say, hey man, you broke that route off a yard too short. You got to run the route this way. Or you made a bad read because I think those things are probably important. Now, you have to be true to yourself. John Wooden in basketball coached in a very different way than like a Rick Pitino, right? Like John Wooden sat on the bench. He was very calm. It also helped that he had some of the best players in the world, but at the same time, that was his style. He was not a yeller. He was not a screamer. So he was true to himself. Rick Pitino's a crazy man on the sideline, right? But you're true to yourself. And I think that's where, and even Dan said that he said part of this too is he's earned that voice, but then it's also, it has effect when you do it judiciously. Like if you're doing it after every rep and just screaming at teammates, then you're going to completely lose their respect. But if occasionally you step on their throat because they did something wrong, and then maybe in the next moment when they do something above and beyond correctly, and you tell them, hey, that was a good job on, I think that's leadership to me. And I'm glad to see him embracing it, because I do think that they need something like that probably.
The other thing, and I was there for when Dan Picture said this, you have to come off genuine to your teammates.
That's my point. Yeah.
If you do not come off genuine, they will sense it and they will tune you out. Now, they may not tune out Joe Burrow collectively or summarily, just tune out everything he says. But if they sense that Joe Burrow's not being genuine, or he's doing something just purely for effect and not for cause, they'll just shake their head and it won't stick with them. But if he does it, like you say, selectively and at the right time and place, it'll sink in, and I think it'll have the desired effect.
I mean, you were obviously around Tom Brady. That's been well documented, by the way. You were around Tom Brady, and that's been documented that Brady could do those kind of things, right? And because you've eventually earned the cachet to do those things, and you can't, like I said, you do it all the time, they're going to tune you out. You do it when it needs to be done. In the moment, that player may grit his teeth and go, "You are such a blank hole," and then realize, maybe he's right. And so I think. I'm interested to see. I loved how he used the word, because when Dan did that, he kind of, like I said, he smiled. He said, "No, I'd rather use blunt." I said, "Well, he used the word mean," which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I will say this about Tom Brady. Tom Brady had two personalities. It was the one on the practice field and the game field. On the field and in the locker room during meetings, and then there was the Tom Brady out socially. Two totally, entirely different human beings. And they got used to the Tom Brady in the locker room. And I will say this, when you ask Rob Gronkowski, when you ask Julian Edelman, when you ask Danny Amendola, ask Matt Light, or obviously Ted Karras, best teammate they've ever had, Tom Brady. And I think a lot of people, a lot of players in that Bengal locker room would say Joe Burrow is the best teammate because he is who he is and he leads in a very genuine manner. That's who I think Joe Burrow should continue to be.
Yeah, he even talked about trying to reach across the aisle to do some more things with defensive players away from the
Yes.
game. You mentioned he's kind of hung out with Dexter Lawrence some. They watched the Knicks Spurs series together, and just hung out in other different ways. And I think that's probably important to him. Like he realized maybe I haven't spent enough time with defensive teammates, and maybe I just need to do that to keep building bridges. And I think that's a guy that's evolving.
That is Richard Skinner, Skinny of Local 12 and Local12.com. The NBA Finals are over. Congratulations to the Nova Knicks, who are celebrating with a parade down the Canyon of Heroes later this afternoon. But the action doesn't stop when the confetti has fallen down the Canyon of Heroes today, and the NBA crowns a new champion. That is because it's a star-studded, scorching summer of sports. Women's basketball and baseball are heating up. We've got the world's biggest soccer tournament on American soil and the first ever MMA fight at the White House lawn last Sunday night. Make your picks for all of these events and more this summer on Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Get into soccer this summer with Prize Picks. They're offering everything from group stage winners to goals scored. I'm excited to watch the big stars from countries like Argentina, Brazil, France, and the U.S. And the U.S. will be playing Australia coming up tomorrow, and that'll be a fascinating match to watch. You can win money while you're doing all of this. What's cool is that I can stack game winners from soccer, NBA, the W, and baseball on top of my player picks for even bigger payouts. So now there's even more ways to play and win big when I get my picks right. I can make all of my picks in the same app with Prize Picks, America's #1 sports pick app. Prize Picks is available in all 50 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Download the app today and use that code CLNS. Get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks, a preferred partner of the NBA. All right, back with Richard Skinner, Skinny of Local 12 and Local12.com. What else stuck out to you about Joe Burrow's address to us in the media yesterday?
No, I just think that he realizes that this is the time to win now. This is the best roster they've had since the 2021 and 2022 teams, and you don't want to waste it. And I think he realizes you're not going to get a whole lot more chances than this. I mean, we can argue the window's open 5 to 7 more years. You can put whatever number on it, but those windows can go sideways really, really quickly. Somebody ages quicker than you thought. Somebody suffers a catastrophic injury. Somebody becomes a malcontent. So I think he realizes the pieces are in place to do this, and you're only going to get so many chances to keep trying to take a swing at it. It all seems, it seemed like this was going to last forever, right? Because in year 2 of Joe Burrow, they go to the Super Bowl, and oh gosh, they're going to do this all the time. And they came close the next year, like, okay, just came up a little bit short. They're going to at least be in the playoffs and the championship game all the time. Well, they haven't been, and they haven't been back since. And so I do think that that's where he realizes the pieces are in place, and there's no, you can't waste this opportunity.
I know it's always dangerous to do this, but that's why we do it, because it's fun. Reading body language, reading aura, reading how somebody is feeling. Joe Burrow looked about as relaxed and confident as I've seen him in a couple of years anyway. Skinny. I just got this quiet sense of confidence from Burrow that he's finally going into a summer break of 4 or 5 weeks before they reconvene in late July, that he has a better idea of what this team could really do this year.
Man, we've seen him in press conferences where he's squirming, he's looking at the clock, he doesn't like to go beyond 15 minutes a lot of times. He went 25 minutes yesterday. I mean, he went 25 minutes, and like I said, I thought he got ramped up the longer it went, and we got the silly season a little bit towards the end about, do you watch the World Cup and that could you see Messi? I mean, that gets the silly season in my opinion, but I mean, he gave 25 minutes without really squirming, and I thought it was, again, very forthright with his answers. I mean, the fact, again, that he used the term with himself of being mean, I just thought was fascinating to me. Like, who calls themselves, who wants to call themselves mean? It was weird to me. But I think I think to your point, I think he's relaxed enough to kind of just let it all pour out and let everybody know I'm in a good place. His team's in a good place. He even said, he goes, I'm going to take a couple weeks off and then I'll start ramping it up. He even said, part of me wants to just go from right here, right into training camp. And I think there's some truth to that.
I'm going to do something visual now, Skinny.
Okay.
Get ready.
Yes.
Usually when Joe Burrow is talking, you know how he slumps or sleeks back into his chair, and I'm like, oh, Joe, please get up above the microphone so my camera can get your fantastic, gorgeous face so everybody can see you cleanly on the one shot that we have for video purposes. When he was asked about pressure, and we're going to find out who on this team embraces pressure, he went from this to, let me tell you about pressure. I hope we're going to find out who embraces pressure, and I hope everybody's ready to embrace pressure. I'm paraphrasing there. But I found his response to that question about the pressure is going to be on. Do you think you guys are ready to respond to the pressure? I thought, to me, that was one of the quietly very important takeaways from Wednesday with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, because I think he even said, he goes, I know I will embrace the pressure, and then went on to talk about, I hope other teammates embrace it too. And there's something to be said for that, because then there is when you feel like everything's been done in the offseason to get your team in a good place from a roster standpoint, well, then there's pressure now on Zac Taylor and the coaching staff to do right things. There's pressure on Joe Burrow to perform. There's pressure on Jamar Chase to perform. There's pressure on Boye Mafe to perform. But that's part of sport. If you can't listen, it's everybody has butterflies before a big game. I mean, you're human, right? I mean, but in the moment, you have to just be able to embrace that pressure and use it in a positive way. And I think that I know I'm with you. I know he will. And we're to his point, we're going to find out who's going to come along with him. And I think you'll have a lot of those guys that'll come along with him.
Another thing that Joe Burrow made mention of yesterday, I found it notable, is how he pumped up Andre Iosivas.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger, and he's playing bigger, stronger, and playing with confidence in the system. I think Joe Burrow wants Andre Iosivas to step up this year. He noted that he's improved his ability to go up and fight for 50-50 balls, which obviously a lot of fans got on him throughout the 2025 season for not making enough of those catches, especially when there was the opportunity to make big plays downfield. He just didn't make those. Burrow made specific mention of Andre's ability to get those balls, at least in OTAs and minicamp practice, and obviously that's not with pads on and whatnot. But I found that notable, that Joe Burrow was pumping up Andre Iosivas on Wednesday.
And listen, he's done that in years past where all of a sudden he'll mention a receiver. I think he even mentioned Mitchell Tinsley last year during the offseason. We all kind of sat up going, Mitchell Tinsley, really? That must mean he's mentioned Tanner Hudson. Before Tanner Hudson became a regular, he mentioned Tanner, and it makes you sit up and go, oh, okay, so Tanner's a part of this. Again, I don't know when you were in and out of the conversation with Dan Pitcher, but somebody asked him about who has the inside track for the number 3 receiver, and he said, well, it can come from different ways. He said Dre's had a great camp, and certainly Dre's one of those. But he said it could come from 3 different rooms. He goes like, I look at Chase Brown as a slot receiver. Yep. Obviously Mike Gesicki can play there. He said that Colby Young, the rookie draft pick out of Georgia, has a specific skill set they feel like they can utilize as well. And so I think that I don't want to call it by committee. I mean, you would, in theory, hope that Andre grasp that and they can't take him off the field. Like, he's doing so many good things as the number 3 receiver that you can't get him off the field. But even if there's the just specific things you can do with him, red zone, third downs because he's a big body guy, those type of things, and then it is by committee in other situations, I think they are fully prepared for that. And I think that's the thing. And I think the whole Gesicki more as a slot guy really is going to be up to what they can get out of Eric All, because I truly think they want him to be the 3-down tight end and then mix and match the other skill sets of the tight ends when they have a specific role for Drew Sample as a backfield blocker, as a run blocker occasionally if they're going to the 2 tight end stuff, to put Gesicki out in the slot for certain matchups. If a team's in base and safety has to cover him or a linebacker has to cover him. So I do think that they've got those, but I think a lot of that part of Gesicki is really predicated on Eric All. Eric had a great camp.
Yep.
Hasn't hit anybody yet. No contact yet. What's it going to be like when he first gets hit on that knee? Because it's going to happen when he first takes maybe a goofy step. What's it feel like? How does it respond? But I think that they've got a lot of hopes for a healthy Eric All and what he can mean for this offense.
I know this is just me, and football players are a different beast altogether. I totally understand that. But the idea that your most physical tight end, and Dan Picture spoke glowingly of the next level Eric All provides as a beast on the field when he's engaged. I mean, they love Eric All. But I still can't get past the fact that he's had three knee surgeries on the same knee, the right knee. And I'm just wondering, are you really relying on that guy to be that kind of tight end after that kind of surgery? And maybe he will be. I don't know. We'll let the results show on the field and on film.
Yeah, but I think the contingencies are, you know what you have in a Drew Sample. You know what skill set he brings
Sure.
and how to get the best. You know what Gesicki's skill set is. You know what Tanner Hudson's skill set is. I don't think they're banking on Eric All to make the offense, but I do think he gives them a different dimension. And to your point, that whole physicality thing, and I still go back to Zach's quote, is a picture of Eric All in the dictionary and what his meaning of, Eric All wants to put his face through your soul. I still thought it was one of the best ever. And even Dan, you can tell Dan, when people talk about Eric All, they kind of grit their teeth and he's just so physical. Like they love the physicality that he brings.
Well, we see him in the locker room and he's smiling and he's
sweet guy.
Sweet guys, soft spoken, and you don't hear that. You don't, like with Dexter Lawrence or with Jonathan Allen or even Brian Cook, you see the edge. I don't think we always see the edge in the locker room with Eric All. But, you listen to Dan Picture and Zac Taylor, like you said, you absolutely know that they believe he has that edge. I want to move to the other side of the ball, ask you a simple question. How much tougher will Brian Cook make Jordan Battle in the secondary?
I think it allows Jordan, because Jordan is I have guys I coach in basketball, and I call them plus-minus guys. Like, they give you a lot of pluses, and then they also give you a bunch of minuses. And you just kind of have to roll with the pluses and the minuses because that's what Jordan Battle is at the moment. Like, there were moments last year, I mean, he was a ball hawk. He's physical when he does tackle. I mean, missed a lot of tackles, but he is physical. He's not afraid of it. He just misses tackles at times. And I just think having that presence next to him of a physical Brian Cook, I mean, like, Geno Stone might have been a great communicator. I know Al Golden kept telling us it was, Geno got us really lined up, and there is importance to that. But and listen, part of the whole missed tackles from the safeties were the linebackers weren't very good, so the safeties had to do so much tackling, for goodness sakes, that
and the defensive line wasn't very good.
That's correct too. I just think Brian, to your point, has that edge. Like, he's not going to let. And Jordan is kind of a clown, right? I mean, he's very loud in the locker room. He comes off as a little bit of a clown in the locker room. I don't mean that in a terribly awful way.
A derogatory. It's not a derogatory sense. He's more of that lighthearted, joking around. But when I'm on the field, when he's on the field, I do feel like he's all about his business. I absolutely believe.
I do, but
I
think there's times he probably freelances when he shouldn't, and is out of position probably when. And I think that's the thing that Brian Cook will bring to him. Like, he's not going to let that kid be a goofball,
and he's not going to let him freelance.
Yeah,
I think that's the more important thing, Skinny, is that you're going to have your specific role. There's a way you need to play the defense, and I think accountability is the word I think I'm looking for. Brian Cook is going to hold people accountable. Dexter Lawrence is going to hold people accountable. And I think you hope those two guys are the anchors of the defense and stay on the field, because I think if they're on the field, everybody will have to be accountable front and back.
And how many times did we talk to Zac Taylor last year on a Friday, and some of these sessions were off the record, so I'll keep that stuff off the record, but he even spoke on the record. He was looking for somebody to be a leader on that defense. They just didn't have anybody. And you usually hope it's your linebackers, right? Because they're in the middle of everything. Well, you're not going to have rookies be leaders. They're just not going to be. I think both those guys could develop into that if they, perform up to a different standard. But there really weren't. B.J. Hill was a captain, but he's kind of one of the guys. Trey Hendrickson was a captain, which I thought was just the most ridiculous thing ever. Logan Wilson's been a captain, but then Logan's been hurt, and obviously Logan's career dovetailed last year. It's hard to lead when your career's dovetailing, so they just didn't have that last year. And to your point, you've got them on at least two levels at the moment with Dexter and Brian Cook, and then you hope one of the linebackers or maybe both evolve into that.
Anything else on your mind? Any other major takeaways as this team gets ready to take a break for 4 weeks?
I think the overriding point was the lack of distractions. Like you because Trey Hendrickson's going through a contract thing and Shamar Stewart, that shouldn't be a distraction to like you doing your business, but it just is. Whether you want it to be or not, it just is. Jermaine Burton, doesn't show up for a practice one day. Where is he? Oh, he had the day off. No, he didn't. He's a clown, and it's a distraction. And all those things are now kind of by the wayside. You've brought in some pros. You brought in guys with Super Bowl rings that know what it's like. And again, I think the drama-free part of this offseason was big. Knock on wood, the lack of injuries, all those things. You weren't worried about somebody rehabbing from this or rehabbing from that. I think that sets the tone for them to really hit the ground running when training camp starts.
Cassius Howell, I'm fascinated to see how he fits into the depth chart. Somebody asked me this, and I thought it was actually a pretty fascinating question. Going into the season, we're assuming, or going into training camp, that it's Boye Mafe and Miles Murphy, right?
Right.
Those are your edges.
Yes.
Cassius Howell, Shamar Stewart. How does that break down?
I think it breaks down to whoever shows you the most in training camp. Like who's showing you the chance to have the most productivity on a rotational basis. I think they'll both play. I think you're going to see snaps come off of Boye Mafe and some snaps come off Miles Murphy. But if those guys aren't productive in the snaps they're giving you, or they don't show productivity in camp, then who's ever the most productive becomes maybe the third rotational end, and that's where you stop it at. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see both their developments because I go back to, there's a world where Shamar Stewart kicks inside on third down if things work out. And that would be fascinating to watch that kind of NASCAR package of just a bunch of defensive ends rushing the passer. I don't think you'd have all four of them on the field at once, but maybe Miles kicks inside on third down too, and you got two edges and two ends playing at the tackle spots. I think they're hoping that Jonathan Allen becomes that third down pass rusher. But I think there's a world for that. So I think the one big part of this is the Mafe signing, the fact that Miles Murphy at least evolved into a player where you're like, okay, he's reliable with maybe even a touch more that you can get from him. And
can set the edge, maybe.
Yeah, but also rushing the passer, he did a better job of that in the last second half of the season to the point where it looks like, you would have hated to go into the season going, boy, I sure hope Shamar Stewart evolves because we desperately need him to, and we sure hope our first pick, the second rounder, Cassius Howell, that he hits the ground running as a rookie. That's a big ask. The fact that now you're more on the hope scale of them of I hope they evolve, at least one, if not both, or they both do great, but now you're not counting on them to evolve. You're hoping they evolve, and I think that's a big place to be.
Dexter Lawrence and B.J. Hill, then T.J. Slayton, and Jonathan Allen.
Correct.
I think right now, I think it's probably B.J. Hill and Dexter Lawrence, but Jonathan Allen could hop in there, like you said, as a rotational third. And I'm sorry, who am I forgetting here?
Not Chris Jenkins.
Chris Jenkins. T.J. Slayton is who I'm forgetting.
Right.
I'm fascinated to see what could happen in the next 5 weeks or 6 weeks. Could a trade be made?
I don't think in the next 5 or 6 weeks, but there will come a point in training camp, in my opinion, that Chris Jenkins is dealt. I just think that some team's going to suffer an injury. You don't need to do it today, and I wouldn't do it until you're in camp. Who knows? Somebody gets hurt in camp, and Chris Jenkins is needed. That could be the case. I think that you'll see probably something at the point of camp, maybe even closer to cut down day. I don't know. We saw the Billy Price for B.J. Hill trade in training camp in whatever that was, 2021, and didn't really think much of it. Who's this B.J. Hill guy? Well, he's become a pretty solid part of this defense.
Anything else from you up on local12.com?
No, I still have to get to my Isaiah Nwakobia feature. I'll probably do that tomorrow. He's a undrafted free agent out of SMU. He's a really good story. Time got away from me and other stuff popped up, and so that'll give me something for Friday. Then for I think a lot of us take a couple at least a week or so off, just take a deep breath, because once that training camp starts, man, it is, as we all know, it's a grind for the players. It's a grind for us too. But we chose this profession, so there we go.
Yeah, indeed we did. It's wonderful talking football with you, Skinny. I think we're taking a couple of weeks off here, and then we'll catch up with you closer to training camp. Obviously, follow all of Richard Skinner's great stuff up on Local 12 and local12.com. You can follow me at CLNS Cincy with a Y.com. Check out my locker room interviews from Tuesday and Wednesday. That's up on the X at Trags, Trags, as well as up on the Jungle Roar podcast YouTube page, youtube.com/@JungleRoarPod. Skinny, have a great summer break, and I will be seeing you, I think, in mid-July for...
Absolutely. Look forward to it, for Trags Fest.
Trags Fest. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to that quite a bit. It won't be just me and Skinny. There'll be a few other people at Trags Fest. So
there will be, and Trags is going to wake up the next morning on his nice back deck and see like probably 5 of us sprawled out asleep.
That wouldn't be altogether a bad thing, Skinny. Keep your closest friends close, not your enemies closer. Keep your closest friends close, and that's how I regard you, Richard Skinner. All right, he's Skinny. I'm Mike Petralia, Trags. I want to thank our great sponsor, Prize Picks, and of course the great team at CLNS. Until we next meet again, you know the drill. Keep that jungle roaring.